The rain was pouring heavily on the old roof in the suburbs of Portland, a place Emily, once thought was a sanctuary. But one evening, my mother coldly declared, "You have to leave," while I had quietly been paying all the family bills. The betrayal from my own flesh and blood pushed me into a bold decision that would change my life forever. Would you dare to stand up when the whole world turns its back on you? It had been raining all day, the kind of Oregon rain that didn't fall in drops but in sheets, soaking the sidewalks and making everything smell like wet bark and old stone. By the time I made it home, my boots were heavy, the cuffs of my jeans dripping, and my hands red from the cold. Home, if you could still call it that. The house sat at the edge of the neighborhood like it didn't quite belong there anymore, weather-beaten and quiet, its once white paint now mottled with age and moss. Vines curled around the front steps, and the windows stared blankly out into the gray evening like tired eyes. The garden, once carefully kept by my father, had become a patchwork of wildflowers and weeds. There was something beautiful about it, in a chaotic way. Something honest. I opened the front door, the hinges creaking like they were protesting my return. Inside, the air was stale. The heater had kicked on, but it didn't seem to make a difference. The cold in this house had little to do with temperature. "Is that you?" my mother called from the kitchen. "Yeah," I answered, setting my laptop bag down on the entry table. I heard the unmistakable sound of her stirring something on the stove, probably her nightly cup of chamomile tea. I didn't expect a welcome hug or even a smile. That wasn't her way. "You're late." "Again," she said sharply as I stepped into the kitchen. "I had a meeting with a client. Time zone difference." She turned to face me, her expression tight, skeptical. Her gray sweater hung loosely on her thin frame, her lipstick a little too dark against her pale skin. "Another online thing?" she asked, waving one hand dismissively. "Honestly, Emily, when are you going to stop pretending this is a real job?" I felt my shoulders stiffen. "It is a real job. Mom, I'm working. I pay the bills. You help with the bills," she snapped, tapping the spoon against the mug a little harder than necessary. "You stay in your room all day, staring at a screen like you're hiding from the world. It's not healthy. It's called remote work," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's what a lot of people do now." "Well, I didn't raise you to be a shut-in." I looked over at my father, who was sitting in his recliner in the next room, a book open in his lap. He glanced up briefly and gave me a small smile, a silent apology, or maybe just a quiet show of support. His skin looked thinner than I remembered, the bags under his eyes deeper. Retirement hadn't been a choice for him, it had been forced by his heart condition. I'd moved back home 3 years ago, thinking it would be temporary, just until I found a steady job after grad school. But life had other plans. The job market had been brutal, and freelancing from my old bedroom turned into a way of surviving barely. I built a portfolio, found clients. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and it kept the lights on in this house, though no one ever said thank you. I was halfway through microwaving a leftover lasagna slice when I heard the sound of the front door opening again. Loud voices, laughter. I turned to see Michael, my older brother, and his wife, Lisa, standing in the hallway, soaked and shivering but smiling like they owned the place. "We're here," Michael announced, shrugging off his coat. "Still smells like old books in here." Lisa gave me a half-hearted wave. "Hey, Em." I blinked. "What? What are you doing here?" "Didn't Mom tell you?" Michael said. "We're moving in for a while. Things have been tight since I lost the accounting job." "Tight," I repeated. Lisa rolled her eyes. "We just need to reset a bit. Your mom said it was fine." I turned to my mother, who was now sipping her tea with deliberate calm. "Michael and Lisa will be staying here for a while," she said, not looking at me. "They need the space more than you do." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She set the cup down. "Emily, it's time you think about finding your own place. You're 30. You can't stay here forever. You know." I laughed. It just came out. Sharp. Bitter. "You mean this house that I've been helping pay for the groceries, the internet dad's prescriptions?" Her expression didn't change. "Michael will take care of things from now on. He's ready to be responsible." Dad shifted in his chair but said nothing. His eyes were on the floor. It felt like the oxygen had left the room. I stood there, lasagna forgotten, heart pounding. The woman who called me lazy, the brother who hadn't visited in months, the sister-in-law who had once mocked me for not having a real job, and now they were taking over the one place I had left, and I was being told to go. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the rain tapping against the window like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't name yet. Anger surged through me, but beneath that was something else, clarity. They didn't see me. Not really. They didn't understand what I did, how hard I worked, what I'd sacrificed. But I did. And maybe that was enough to start fighting for myself, not with screaming, not with begging, but with leaving. Eventually. On my terms. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen. My client inbox was full. I had 2 new contracts waiting for review. Rent in Portland was steep, but not impossible. The house felt colder than ever that night, but somewhere deep in my chest, something had started to warm. There was a time I used to count rejection emails the way kids count stars. By 25, I had a master's degree in environmental engineering and a resume that had seen more tailoring than a wedding dress. Still, every morning I'd open my inbox to the same rehearsed lines: "We've chosen to move forward with other candidates. We appreciate your interest. Best of luck in your future endeavors." Eventually, I stopped opening them altogether. For 6 months after graduation, I lived off unemployment benefits in the hope that something would shift. Portland's job market had grown tighter, not looser. Entry level meant 2 years of experience, and experience required being hired. It was a closed loop I couldn't crack, so I stayed in the small back room of the house I'd grown up in, at a crooked desk my father had built when I was 12. The finish was chipped, the drawers stuck, and the left leg leaned ever so slightly to the right, just like my life at the time. But it held my laptop, and from that, I found a crack in the loop. It started with a single listing on a freelancer site. A small renewable energy startup in Vermont needed help modeling their stormwater runoff system. I didn't think I'd get it, but I sent a proposal anyway. 3 days later, I was on a video call with their founder, explaining my approach with a nervous smile and shaky internet. They hired me, paid me $300 for a week's work. It wasn't much, but it was everything. From there, I built slowly, project by project, week by week. I started with stormwater, then small residential solar designs, then energy audits for municipal buildings. Word spread, clients returned. I built a personal website, designed a logo in Canva. I taught myself how to invoice, how to set deadlines, how to say my rate is non-negotiable without flinching. By the end of the first year, I was making more than I ever expected, enough to cover my student loans, help with bills, and even tuck away a little each month. My clients were from all over Seattle, Boston, even Sydney once. I worked early mornings and late nights, sometimes in pajamas, sometimes in coffee-stained hoodies, but it was mine. I had built it. From nothing. Still, to my mother, it was a fantasy. "Emily, what exactly do you do all day?" she asked one morning over her bowl of oatmeal, looking at me like I was a magician trying to convince her the rabbit came out of the hat by itself. "I just finished a systems report for a team in Texas," I said, pouring my coffee. "They're retrofitting an old campus with solar panels." She blinked. "So, it's all on the computer?" I nodded. "It's remote. That's how most firms work now." She scoffed. "How can you trust that anyone can say they're sending money? What if it's all a scam?" "It's not a scam, Mom." Look, I grabbed my phone and opened the dashboard from my freelance portal. "I just got paid yesterday. That's my account." She squinted at the numbers. "That can't be real. No one pays that for computer work." I set the phone down. "They do. And I've earned every bit of it." She stirred her oatmeal slowly. "Still doesn't seem right. You need to get out of the house. Get a real job. With coworkers. A commute." My breath caught. Not because of what she said she'd said worse, but because of how small I still felt when she said it. I wanted to yell, to list every client I'd helped, every late night I'd spent debugging code, every hour I'd gone without sleep to hit a deadline while she watched Wheel of Fortune in the living room. But I didn't. Instead, I walked back to my room, shut the door quietly, and pulled my laptop onto my lap. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening my email. There were 4 new client requests waiting, and a thank you message from a woman in Colorado who told me my analysis had saved her startup nearly $20,000 in utility costs. I read her email twice, then I read it again. Outside, rain tapped against the glass. My hands were still shaking. I heard a soft knock at the door. It creaked open, and Dad peeked in, smiling faintly. "Hey, kiddo. Got time to help me figure out how to change the settings on the new thermostat? This thing's smarter than I am." I smiled, the tightness in my chest easing just a little. "Yeah, sure. Just give me 5. He nodded, then paused. "You're doing good." I hope you know that." I bit the inside of my cheek. "Thanks, Dad." When he left, I turned back to my laptop, pulled up my to-do list, and started typing again. No one in this house understood what I did, but somewhere out there, across the country, people did. And slowly, I was beginning to understand it too. I wasn't hiding from the world. I was building something in it, quietly, relentlessly, on my own terms. When Dad collapsed in the garden, everything shifted. He'd been pruning the blackberry bushes, his last little patch of control in a world that was slowly peeling away from him when I heard the shears hit the ground with a metallic thud. We got lucky that day. A mild heart attack, they said. Manageable with medication and lifestyle changes, the cardiologist assured us. But still, he was done working. The doctors were clear. No more physical stress. No more long drives to the factory. No more paycheck. That's when the money got tight. Dad's early retirement plan had always been modest. He'd never been the kind of man to chase wealth, just stability. A roof over our heads, a grill in the backyard, a reliable car, but his pension wasn't enough. And Social Security didn't cover half the medical bills, let alone the mortgage. Mom, however, didn't slow down. If anything, she doubled down spa appointments, new handbags, weekly grocery trips that included artisan cheeses and overpriced candles. I deserve a little joy, she'd say when the credit card bill came in. So I stepped in. Without saying anything, I set up a direct deposit from my business account to Dad's checking enough each month to cover the house payment and utilities. I paid off the hospital bills, the prescription plan, the blood pressure monitor. I added Mom as an authorized user on my credit card, told myself it would be temporary. She never said thank you. Instead, she started asking more of me. Emily, could you unload the dishwasher? Emily, the trash is full. Emily, why haven't you vacuumed? You're home all day, aren't you? It didn't matter that I was logging 60 hours a week from that tiny room in the back of the house, that I was holding video calls with clients in Dubai while folding laundry between sessions. To her, I was still the daughter who never left, the girl who sat at a screen playing pretend. One morning, while I was finalizing a proposal for a municipal solar project in Denver, she barged into the room holding a laundry basket. Honestly, Emily, this is too much, she huffed. There are socks all over the living room, and the kitchen is a mess. What do you even do all day? I looked up from my laptop, the screen glowing with spreadsheets and CAD diagrams. I'm working. Sitting in pajamas, drinking coffee, and typing. That's not working. That's hiding. I swallowed hard. Do you have any idea how much I've contributed this year? I don't want to talk about money. Of course you don't, I snapped, standing up. Because you'd have to admit that without me, this house would have fallen apart 6 months ago. Her eyes narrowed. Don't talk to me like that. I am still your mother. I took a breath, let it out slowly, then maybe act like it. The silence that followed was deafening. She turned and left the room, didn't speak to me for 2 days, and yet I stayed. Not for her, but for him. Dad was the only one who saw me, who knew how hard I worked, how much I gave up. He'd knock gently on my door every evening with a cup of tea and ask, "How's my superstar doing today?" Sometimes, he'd sit beside me and watch me scroll through schematics, nodding along even if he didn't understand a thing. He'd tell me about the old factory he used to work at, how he used to dream of building things that lasted. You're doing it, he'd say. You're building something, not just for yourself, for this whole family. You're the reason we're still standing. I stayed because I couldn't bear the thought of him thinking I had given up. He'd already given up his job, his strength, his independence. I wasn't about to walk away and take what little peace he had left. But it came at a price. Every day, I felt a little more invisible in my own home. The walls felt closer, the expectations heavier. It was like living in a cage that looked like a house when I was paying for, but couldn't escape. And every night, after the dishes were done and Mom had settled in with her wine and reality TV, I would sit alone in the dark with my laptop glowing in my lap, whispering to myself, "You are not crazy. You are not lazy. You are doing everything you can." But sometimes, that didn't feel like enough, and I wondered how long I could carry it all before something finally broke. I heard the front door slam just as I was finishing a late-night Zoom call with a client in Singapore. The walls of the house, old and thin, didn't leave much to the imagination. Laughter, then voices too familiar and far too unwelcome. I walked into the hallway, still in my sweats, only to find Michael standing there with 2 suitcases and Lisa behind him, already complaining about the smell of mildew in the living room. "Emily," Mom said with forced cheer, "Michael and Lisa are moving in for a while. Isn't that wonderful?" "Wait, what?" I blinked. "When did we talk about this? We didn't need to," she replied, brushing past me. "This is their home too." Michael didn't even meet my eyes. He was already kicking his sneakers off like he owned the place. Lisa dropped her handbag on the dining table. "We'll need the guest room and some space in the garage." I stood there in stunned silence, mouth half open. I wasn't asked, I was informed. For the next week, the house turned into a place I barely recognized. Lisa took over the kitchen like she was running a bad Airbnb, and Michael turned the living room into his personal gaming cave. I tried to keep my head down and work, but there was no peace, no respect, no boundaries. And then came that morning. It was 6:15 a.m. when Lisa banged on my bedroom door like it was a police raid. "Emily, wake up. Make breakfast. Would you? We all live here. We all share responsibilities." "Right." I opened the door, bleary-eyed and exhausted. "Can you not yell I was up working until 2? "Working?" she scoffed. "Sure. Sitting in front of a computer doesn't count as real work." I bit my tongue, turned around, and made breakfast anyway. A simple spread omelets, toast, and a little salad. When I set it on the table, Michael wrinkled his nose. "That's it. I thought you were supposed to be smart. Can't even cook something decent." I stared at them, the resentment burning in my chest. "I'm not your maid." "No," Lisa said flatly. "You're just the freeloading sister who hides in her room pretending she's a CEO. That was the moment something snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. That evening, Mom called me into the living room. Dad was lying on the couch, eyes half-lidded, breathing slow. His heart had been worse lately, and I could see it in the way he blinked, deliberate, fatigued, like it took effort to stay in the moment. Mom sat across from me, her voice cool and rehearsed. "Emily," she began, "you've had your time here. But it's clear that Michael is ready to take on more responsibility. He'll be helping with the bills now. I think it's time for you to find a place of your own." It was almost laughable, except it wasn't. Dad shifted, trying to sit up, but Mom placed a hand on his shoulder to keep him still. He looked at me, his face pale and drawn, eyes glistening with something that looked like regret or helplessness. I couldn't speak. I just walked out, keys in hand, heart racing. I drove straight to the hospital, sat beside Dad while he underwent a routine test. When he came out, I held his hand and finally let myself speak. "They want me gone." He didn't look surprised. "I know," he said softly. "I didn't stop her. I should have. But you don't need to stay where you're unloved." I stayed for too long in silence. "Don't do the same. Live your life." I cried in the elevator on the way down. Silent. Furious tears. That night, I logged into my banking portal, transferred the money from the joint account to a private one. I made sure Dad's bills would continue to be paid directly from it. His meds, his checkups, everything. But I removed Mom's name. I canceled the card she used to buy new rugs and candles and spa treatments. Then, I packed. It didn't take long, just a few boxes. My laptop, my books, the notebooks filled with sketches and design notes. A framed picture of Dad and me, taken years ago in front of Mitt. Hood. When I stepped into the hallway, Mom was standing by the door, arms crossed. Michael was on the couch, pretending not to notice. "I'm leaving," I said plainly. Mom arched an eyebrow, running away again. "No," I said. "I'm choosing to leave. There's a difference. You'll come crawling back when things get tough." I smiled faintly. "I don't think so, but I'm sure you'll be the first to call when your credit card stops working." She flinched, just slightly. I walked out into the rain. No umbrella. The water felt cold and honest against my skin. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of getting wet. The first night in my new apartment was quiet. Too quiet. There were no footsteps thudding across the ceiling, no Lisa slamming cabinets, no Michael yelling at his console, no passive-aggressive sighs from Mom echoing down the hallway. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a cheap wall clock, and the sound of rain tapping on the window only now. It didn't feel hostile. It felt like permission, a soft reminder that the storm had passed. I sat cross-legged on the floor of my tiny studio in downtown Portland, eating Thai takeout from a paper container and watching headlights flash across my bare white walls. There wasn't much furniture, just my work desk, an air mattress, and a lamp, but it felt mine in a way the old house hadn't in years. I slept like a rock that night. In the following weeks, my business grew faster than I expected. The absence of chaos did wonders for my focus. I started waking up early not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My projects expanded, clients referred others, and one of my designs got featured in a small tech blog, which brought in 3 more contracts by the end of the month. For the first time, I felt proud. I went to visit Dad every few days. He was still in and out of the hospital for checkups, but his spirit had lifted. We'd sit together in the sunlit courtyard, sipping bad vending machine coffee and watching ducks fight over crumbs. "You've changed," he said once, smiling at me over his glasses. "Not just your address. There's something in your eyes." "It's brighter." I shrugged. "I'm just tired of waiting for permission to live my own life." He chuckled. "You never needed anyone's permission. You just needed a door to open. And I'm sorry it took so long for you to find it." We never talked much about Mom after that. We didn't have to. He knew, and I knew, that some wounds don't close just because you want them to. But I felt less burdened by it now, less afraid of the silence between what should have been and what was. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I got a voicemail. It was Michael. His voice cracked, trying too hard to sound casual. "Hey, listen, I know it's been a while. Mom's not doing great. Bills are piling up. Lisa left. She said I needed to man up, whatever that means. Look, I know we've had our issues, but maybe we can talk just for Mom's sake." The next day, Mom called. I didn't pick up, but her message was brief and uncharacteristically soft. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push you away. I could use your help." For a second, just a second, I felt the pull. The old reflex to step in, fix everything, carry the weight that wasn't mine. But then I looked around my tiny apartment, at the sticky notes on the wall from happy clients, the email alerts from my accountant, the growing life I had built with nothing but stubbornness and Wi-Fi. And I knew. They were adults, capable, healthy, just unwilling to change. I replied to Michael's text with a single sentence. I hope you both find your way, but I'm no longer your safety net. No anger, no bitterness, just clarity. That weekend, I set up the paperwork for something I'd been dreaming about for months, a scholarship fund, named after my father, to support young women entering tech and design fields, especially those without family support. It was small, but it was real, a seed, and I planted it with full faith it would grow. Every day now feels different. The sunlight through my window feels warmer. My morning coffee tastes like possibility. Sometimes I still think about the past, about what could have been if things had gone differently, but then I remind myself I didn't escape. I chose freedom. I chose me. And in choosing myself, I didn't become selfish. I became whole.